You might have a different perspective, a different teaching. You might move someone forward in their life. My favorite thing that my uncle Eugene shares with me all the time too, he says, my mom always shares we have to be gathered as flocks. In our language, that's one mind and one heart. Yayasto, working together. Lata Shwali, we're one spirit. We're one spirit. And once you're that spirit, you can't be broken. That's the toughest thing you can break is the spirit. He said it's like we're all in one big canoe. We're all family. If any of you have ever paddled in a canoe before, you know you have to be paddling together as one. In sync with the heartbeat. As we paddle forward together, we're going to do nothing but move forward. As one. No one's left behind. If someone's paddled out of sync, we'll just do nothing but circles. That's all of our good work. All of our good work. So my family and I are here to share a welcome. This is how we welcome you into our Lulum. Lulum in our language means home. The song that we're going to share with you today is our Kwame Land song. It came to one of our family members from Stahelis, his name's Kelsey Charlie. He went to our island, and he went on a walk with one of our archaeologists, Tony Danderin. We're on an island, McMillan Island in Fort Langley. And as he was walking on the island, the tip of the island, we're surrounded by water. And as the waves were bouncing against the shore, he was sharing with us that there was a log that was spinning around. And as this log was spinning around, we heard this song. And he sat there for a while. That log spun around 2 more times. And then this little song came to him. But he shared with us that this is not his song to carry, this is the nation's song. So this is a song that we share to all the people here that have traveled far and near. Because today you need to be grounded. Because what our old one shared with us all the time is that life sometimes moves way too fast. Life moves way too fast. Faster sometimes than you can keep up with it. Sometimes we need to slow down, because that's when accidents happen. We need to slow down. Sometimes after that, it's just someone rushing to be somewhere. We need to slow down, be grounded, and be grateful to the people that are around us. Be grateful to the people that are in our lives, the people that we love. And we want to share this song with you to ground you guys so that you can enjoy this important discussion. The song is not really a song in our ways for our family here. When we sing this song, some of our songs are thousands of years old. This is our way of prayer. This is not a performance, this is our medicine for you guys. Our old ones share with us all the time. When we share these songs, the ancestors from the other side, not only our ancestors, each and every one of your ancestors here, they come and fill this room up. They help you through those hard times. Because we don't know what you're going through today. We don't know what journey you go through today. How hard your job is today. How far away you're from your family you are today. How much time you sacrifice. How much time you rush. Also. So we just want to give a little bit of medicine with your shorty, your spirit, to fill that shorty so you can keep on going and keep doing the good work that you do today. So I want to raise my hands, each and every one of you today. My family, importantly, raise their hands. And as we raise our hands, without words being said, we have the utmost respect for each and every one of you here in this room. Utmost respect for each and every one of you in this room. I thank you for your patience for allowing me to speak this much. But we're going to share our welcome song now. And this is for each and every one of you. We're going to ask our family from Surrey, we're going to ask our mayor and council, if there's any council in this room, to come stand with us. It's what our late Sam shared with us all the time. Our late chief, Grand Chief Bill Gabriel, hereditary chief, he shares with us all the time, and even amongst yourselves. Relationships mean everything. Relationships mean everything. And if we stand together as one, we just get stronger. This is our family from Surrey, because this is our traditional territory. But take care of our family in Surrey too. So we ask our friends and family to stand with us if they're here, because we want to be stronger for you guys. So I thank you. I just
wanted to say, my wife will speak after later. I thank the organizers, Jennifer for the call for asking us to be here. I thank Your Honor, Doug McCallum for being here. I thank the ones in uniform from police, for your presence, Surrey and Duke from the Delta Police Force. I thank you for your presence, Minister of Transportation or Health from Victoria. We all have to work together. The one my son was talking about, we were busy doing work yesterday across the river, my wife's land. I had a couple calls on my phone. She actually is from here, Doug. The lady is a teacher at SFU. The one my son was talking about, and I got to meet this elderly, beautiful lady at SFU, and she loved her songs. I had seen it on the news, but I didn't know who it was. But it happened in between Hastings and Commercial Drive. She was a healthy, elderly lady, and apparently was getting groceries. She got hit by a truck. She died. But her daughter, who we do work, who is a teacher at SFU here, my mom loved your ways, your culture, the similarities between your culture and ours. I told my wife last night, my sons, they asked us to open up the celebration of life for tomorrow in Gastown. And I said to my wife, we have to honor this lady. I wanted to share that with you because we always say to our children, it only takes seconds to have an accident. Sometimes we don't even have time to react. It just comes like that. We were honored to be here. We love coming to Surrey. I always tell my wife, thank you for respecting the land you're on. For the ones that have traveled far and near, I'm grateful you had a safe trip. But these songs are also help you have a safe trip home and go back to your family. You can learn from each other and help each other out. And the lady said, this is a beautiful start. She said, look at all the people that have come. Our way, you say, you put the word out and the people will come. So you've done a beautiful job. I'll let my wife speak and then thank you. Thanks, bro.
Awesome. Respected dignitaries, family, friends, special guests. I am Chief Marilyn Bugle of the Kwantlen First Nation. My traditional name is Sacrosanct. I stand here with my family, the Surrey family, my son, my husband, Wassleton, and my son, Michael Kelly Hebron, who carries both our late father's names. And we're training him as the best teacher to be a traditional speaker. But like my husband and my son said, we're honored to be here. We brag about Surrey all the time. It is true, we live in such a fast-paced life, it's crazy. If you miss out on something, you be missing out on helping people. Like someone said, saving a life. I want to hold my hands up to each and every one of you for traveling here, answering Jennifer's call. Because we need all of you. We need each and every one of you to come together, to be one. Not some. We are all one. Lots of them. One mind, one heart. The eye is still working together. Nobody's any better than anyone else. We sit here, we're all the same. We all have things we have to say for the betterment of all people. You all matter. Everything you say matters. Your voice coming from all over matters. Don't be afraid to say what's in your heart and your mind. Sometimes you guys go up here too much. I challenge you today to go here to have that balance. When you do that, you have better results. Because you're speaking from your heart, your truth. Think of it when you come in these doors that you're speaking to your granddaughter, your daughter, your sister, your brother, your auntie, your uncle, your grandpa, and all the way up the line. When we stand here as a people, we have to think 7 generations ahead of us. That's our teaching. You stand here for yourself, they ask you to leave the room. Only the ones that can help and help the next 7 generations are allowed here. I said to Jennifer, it's good that you have local people's pictures up here. When you have these posters, my dad works here. My brother, my uncle works here, my auntie. Those are things people can relate to. Slow down. We're so distracted by technology, and everybody knows it. Some of you are hiding yours right now. Oh, I'm sorry. I can see the lights on the Our elders say you be here in the presence now. You have 2 days to be not someone. We all one. Put that phone away. How do you start going home and telling your wife or your husband, whoever you're telling me, I'm going home. Be committed to this work because it's important work. Be free. Be free. They need you. That's why they called you out. You're asked from all over because you must be an expert. They're asking me for your gifts these next 2 days to share your purpose, what you have in your heart and your mind. Every time I turn on that TV, you hear that so many deaths. My kids don't even like me turning on the news. It's too sad. But we all have the responsibility, we're all accountable to all that. Even if you don't work in this sector. We as human beings play a part in that because we're distracted. We're in that phone or we're doing something. One life is too many. One life is too much. Remember that when you have your voice here at the table. Share your wisdom, share your knowledge. That's what Jennifer's asking. Do that not only your family, but the ones that yet to come to your family. Make it about your family and then you'll work really hard. Because guess what? We're all family. We're all related in some way. We're all connected to the farthest one that's here, to the nearest one. We're all connected. If you don't think so, then you're at the wrong meeting. They need you. That's why they call on you. You have something to give. You have a gift to bring here. All your seniors, your elders, your seasoned ones, they call you. They don't like sometimes when they say seniors. All the ones with the gray hair. You young ones, sit with them, listen to them. They have their wisdom, their record keepers, their knowledge. Sit with them. Have open ears this next 2 days. People know when you have closed ears. Even when you're fully listening, when you're not. Be present here. If you're going to change something, this is the first one. This is the first annual. This is the first annual. So you know you can count on your trip next year. So again, we're honored to be here. The call of is for you experts to sit, brainstorm.
We'll do one more song for the people, okay? Let's just honor all the ones that have come through, okay? Then we're done, okay?
Again, on behalf of my family, hands up to you, everyone, beautiful city. With that, I found
ACMCIF, thank our CM speaking. Thank you again for your patience here, my family here, far and near. We're going to share one more song before we part ways. In our culture, we start with the song so that you guys are grounded here today, so that you feel good, so that you can be with each other, one with each other. And we end with the song. The reason why we end with the song is because we don't, like how we heard some of our family here travel really far. Some of them are near or far. At the end of the day, when we sing this last song, making sure that you have safe travels back home. So you can go home to your partner. Go home to your brother or sister, your mom and dad. The song's meant to protect you for your journeys back home. And I want to share, don't be afraid to use your voice. Don't be afraid. If you have something to bring to the table, don't be afraid to share it. That's why we're here. Everybody's voice matters, just like how our students shared. Everybody's voice matters. Everybody has a gift and a role to bring to the table. We're just one big wheel. We need each other. For the goals and the achievements that we want to do moving forward, we need each and every one of you in this room. Each and every one of you. Even if you think your role is small, it's very important. All your roles are important. Without you, the wheel will pop and we'll be stuck. So we're going to share one more song to be moving forward in a good way. Because today is just a discussion. We want to shut that back door. So there's no more of that. No more pain, loss, and families. And we're just going to move forward. The meaning of this song, it came to me when I was 19 years old when we were in Richmond. We were by the water. Most of our teachings are from the water. And the most beautiful thing that my father-in-law shared with me, he says, no matter how far you are, no matter how far I am, no matter how far anyone is, we're still connected through the water. This word, the world is mostly water. And that's the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. The song means be proud of who you are, be proud of where you come from, to keep your head up and keep moving forward. And to not let those bad things go inside your basket. My brother shared with me, when you have a basket, it's like when you go through life, you have a basket in front of you. People can say hurtful things to you, and they'll go inside that basket. But you have a choice to put that basket down and only bring it up when those good things are said about you. So it feeds you slowly so you keep on going. But this song's an honor song for each and every one of you here today. Once again, I have the highest respect for the organizers. Our mayor here today, thank you for your presence. All the people here, my family now, we're all family. Thank you for being here and being present. That means a lot to the organizers. I should stay.
before you leave. Thank you so much for that amazing welcome.
Thank you.
And those words that you spoke today, they were so profound. And I thank you so much for blessing us today with those words, those very thought-provoking things that you said. They're all so very true. And I really want to thank you for making time today. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. It's a small token of our appreciation. Thank you. Thank you. While we're here, just gathering our thoughts after that very profound welcome that we've had, I'd just like to recognize a few of our important guests in the room today. We have our mayor, of course, Mayor McCallum of Surrey, but we also have a number of other mayors from other cities. So I'd like to just welcome the mayor of Abbotsford, Henry Braun, the mayor of North Vancouver, Linda Buchanan, and the mayor of Terrace, Carol Leclerc. We also have a number of councillors in the room, and I know that Mayor McCallum wants to speak to that, so I won't go into all those details, but just to say that we're really blessed today to have some really high-level civic leaders who believe in road safety, and so that's going to be amazing to have your leadership to guide us through those tasks that we have to do, those words that were said. We've been given a huge task ahead of us, but I think it's one that we can actually make happen. So I just want to thank you for that. Also, I did forget to introduce myself. So my name is Shabnem Afzal. I'm the Road Safety Manager for Surrey, and I'm here today because my partners and I have been instrumental in putting this summit together. And I'd just like to recognize Provincial Health Services Authority, Megan Oakey, who's here in the audience in the front line here. They've sponsored the conference, but there's been many other people involved in this. And I wouldn't like to forget Fraser Health and Tobin Copley, who's here too. And we've also got Vancouver Coastal Health, who's helped organize this too. So just for you to know that this isn't something that just happened overnight. Obviously, we worked really, really hard, but we all felt that it was a really strong reason for bringing people together. And of course, we've got a number of sponsors as well. We've got Urban Logic, Smart Cone Technologies, GNEC, Smart City ITS, Valley Traffic Systems, and Novax. And without all these sponsorships, it would be pretty tough to put this together. So really, thank you very much for that. And I'll hope that people make some time to go and visit those booths as well during coffee break. Some quick housekeeping before we go any further, though. In the event of an emergency, I'd like to just let you know there's some exits to the left and the right, and I'd ask that people move towards those if you hear the alarm going off, and you'll be guided to a safe spot. Also, just before we go to our next item, I just want to make you aware that, road safety, we heard today about the loss of your friends, and there may be other people in this room who also have lost loved ones. And if they feel that they need some time to gather their thoughts or or be triggered by this, then we do have a safe space for them to go to, and they can go outside and one of our volunteers will take you to room 203 in the library. Okay, before I go any further, I'd just like to have a tribute to those that we've lost.
There are times when it doesn't seem to matter how much love or care we hold in our hearts or our hands. Still, they are taken from us. Still, they are gone. Suddenly, in a heartbeat, in someone else's decision, daughters, sons, the ones who remain.
Please join me in 1 minute's silence in remembrance of those who've lost their lives on the roads. We honor all those people who've lost their lives and all of those families who have to live with that loss. And some of those families you saw in the movie today. And when we met with them, it was a difficult thing to do. And I just want to thank them so very much for their courage, for helping us make that, to raise this awareness about the issue that we're dealing with here. It affects everyone. Doesn't matter who you are, what age you are, where you come from. It's something that doesn't discriminate. Road collisions are something that we can prevent. But right now, I'd like to introduce our mayor, Doug McCallum, to come and join us, please, at the stage and speak to you about all our plans for Surrey. Thank you.
Thank you very, excuse me, thank you very much. My voice is gone, so fortunate for you, I'll be very quick. Thank you, Sanam, for hosting this Vision Zero conference. And I want to give a very warm welcome to all the mayors, the MLAs that are here, the MPs, and the councillors that are here. Unfortunately, I can't see a thing out there, so I can't introduce you, but thank you very, very much for coming. And thank everybody in the audience for coming out for the next 2 days to talk about a very, very, very important thing in our communities throughout BC. It's great to see so many of you here today to discuss road safety challenges and how we can save lives in our towns and cities. There is no question that we can make BC a leader in safe mobility, and Surrey is taking steps to be a leader in this field. In 2018, we had 21 traffic-related deaths on our Surrey streets. The 10-year average is 20 people killed in Surrey collisions each year, and roughly 12,000 traffic-related injuries each year. And it really brings home an example is when I was actually driving in this morning, literally a couple hours ago, from South Surrey to here along King George. Very unfortunately, there was a pedestrian that was hit and again, died on the way to the hospital. And I think it's a reminder as we are here for the next 2 days that we need to do something to make our streets and educate our drivers so that we can make our streets a lot safer. And certainly our condolences go out to that person's family and their friends. These statistics are sobering, and it's clear we need to change the nature of our roads and how we behave on them. Our goal is simple, and that is to have everyone be able to get where they need to go safely, whether traveling by foot, bike, transit, or car. That's why I am proud to declare Surrey a Vision Zero city. Today, we signal that the city, together with our partners in road safety, the provincial integrated road safety units, our police and fire services, ICBC, Fraser Health, and Surrey schools, are willing to do the hard work to eliminate traffic deaths and serious injuries from our streets. Our Vision Zero Surrey Safe Mobility Plan will be the guide which we put on the path to zero facilities and serious injuries. Our strategy sets us on a path to make every journey on the city roads with safer drivers, driving safer cars at safer speeds and on safer roads. We need to learn and apply successful interventions from other communities and implement new ideas. Vision Zero originated in Sweden, where it was adopted as a national strategy in 1997. Since then, despite increased traffic volumes, the number of transportation-related deaths has dropped over 30% in Sweden. Surrey is joining a growing number of countries and cities around the world committed to increasing safe mobility for all. Vision Zero anticipates that as humans, we will make mistakes, but through the right combination of road design, road rules, smart behaviors, collisions do not need to result in severe injury or death. Vision Zero promotes a culture of shared responsibility where both designers and policymakers, not just the users, work together to prevent deaths on our streets. It demands that we change our road safety culture by redefining what is and isn't acceptable. A need to prioritize data-driven improvements in road safety. We target our efforts for the greatest impact by refocusing on areas of high risk and on those who are most at risk of being killed or seriously injured. Our plan sets an achievable and measurable goal to demonstrate progress over the next 5 years. And that is to reverse the trend of rising injuries and deaths on Surrey roads by achieving a minimum 15% reduction in road-related fatalities and injuries per 1,000 people. We have the obligation and the tools to save lives and be a Vision Zero city. Surrey is firmly committed to achieving our Vision Zero goal. And I want to thank all of you for coming out today. And certainly I'm looking forward to taking part in different parts in the next 2 days. And I encourage with those very warm greetings that we had this morning that we all work together so that we can make our roads a lot safer in all of our communities. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you, Honourable Mayor. I'd actually like to invite some of our road safety partners, our Vision Zero Action team, and those who support us in our work to come to the stage right now for a photo with our mayor. Thank you so much for your leadership in this.
Thank you.
Feel free to just come along.
Who's coming?
Oh, just a few of our partners.
Oh, okay.
So everyone who's coming onto the stage right now has invested time. They've made contributions, whether it be data, whether it be working with us to help us understand better the best ways to reduce fatalities on our roads and serious injuries. So I just want to acknowledge that. Thank you so much for coming to the stage. Oh. Thank you everyone. Okay, time for our next guest. I'd like to introduce you to Erin Anderson, who's come here all the way from Victoria today. And she actually is, she's a senior manager for BC's road safety strategy, and she's joining us from the Ministry of Public Safety and Solicitor General. Before joining the ministry though, Erin worked for the federal government as Director of Parliamentary Affairs for the Ministries of Canadian Heritage and Industry Canada, working towards the ultimate goal now of having zero traffic related injuries. Thank you, Erin. Please join us on the stage now.
So I'm not sure if my, oh yeah, presentation will come up shortly. Oh, perfect, thank you. So thank you, Shabnam, and thank you to the City of Surrey and Mayor McCallum for the invitation to join you here today. Today we're here to talk together to share and discuss ideas on how to implement and achieve Vision Zero. And I'd just like to acknowledge Surrey and in taking the steps to help keeping our roads safe. The Vision Zero approach to road safety has been adopted by many of the world's leading road safety jurisdictions, as Mayor McCallum mentioned earlier. It has a tremendous impact on road safety outcomes. Simply put, Vision Zero states that no loss of life on our roads is acceptable. Vision Zero puts the burden on the shared responsibility of road safety design, policymakers, road users, and helps to make sure that all of us have a part to play in achieving our safe roads. One of the main principles of Vision Zero is collaboration. Collaboration between road safety partners in both the private, public sector, as well as among federal, provincial, and local governments. We can all contribute to improving one or more of the elements of road safety, even if we cannot contribute to all of them. BC was the first province to adopt Vision Zero, and to help us along this path, we created the BC Road Safety Strategy. Our BC Road Safety Strategy is a unique Made in BC approach that was designed to leverage the efforts of our road safety partners and the diverse network that we have across the province. I just want to take a little bit of time also to acknowledge the many partners represented here, both on the slide and also in the room here today, who are engaged in the road safety strategy, working together towards achieving Vision Zero. So thank you for taking the time and the effort and the work you put in on all of our working committees. The many projects that you contribute to all help to keep our roads safer. The creation of our Vision Zero logo is just one example of our partners coming together and spreading the message across the province. The purpose of the logo is to inform the public about our shared road safety responsibility, and is also to demonstrate the partnership approach that we have with the province. It's intended to communicate and spread the message of BC's goal in eliminating motor vehicle deaths and serious injuries. Our road safety partners are encouraged to use the Vision Zero logo as broadly as possible and to integrate it as part of their corporate branding and all external facing road safety education programs, public relations, and social media. The logo is available on the Road Safety BC's website, and so if any of our partners are interested in using it, I encourage you to do so. Another resource that the BC Road Safety Strategy has produced for local governments is the BC Community Road Safety Toolkit. The toolkit is an easily accessible knowledge source that addresses many of the road safety issues and challenges that municipalities face. It was designed to help close the knowledge gap by providing a wide-ranging resource on both proven and innovative interventions that municipalities can undertake. It also helps to strengthen the capacity in the area of road safety by outlining all of these implementation tools and strategies. Individual municipalities can use the toolkit to develop road safety efforts and programs that are tailored to their local context. And in fact, thanks Shabnam, because I believe the city of Surrey actually used the toolkit when they were looking to create their road safety plan, which the mayor announced earlier today. In addition, we have some upcoming projects. The BC Road Safety Strategy brings together approximately 150 representatives from almost 60 road safety partner organizations. And there are quite a few projects underway at the moment. A couple of them include the Indigenous Community Traffic Safety Strategy, the Road Safety Indicators Project. We also have a project on safer vehicles and making sure that the life cycle of your vehicle is in good working condition, just to name a few. Our working committees come together to meet on a regular basis to identify issues, priorities, and propose solutions and provide their expertise and perspectives and support the implementation of these various initiatives. There we go. In addition to the collaborative work that the province, that the road safety strategy has undertaken, the province also has improved legislation and policies to combat unsafe driving and high-risk driving behaviors. BC has continuously strengthened its distracted driving policies and laws by increasing fines and penalty points for anyone caught talking, texting, or emailing on their phone while driving. Using an electronic device while driving has also been classified as a high-risk driving offense, which leads to mandatory driver improvement training. Currently, with anyone with 2 distracted driving tickets within a 3-year period will see their total fines and penalties rise to upwards of $2,000. We also know that new technologies will continue to play a greater role in all areas of police enforcement and road safety into the future. In BC, we have 140 intersection safety cameras that are already installed throughout the province. This is where cameras capture vehicles traveling through the intersections that run red lights. Our data shows that 60% of our crashes each year happen at these intersection safety camera locations, and that speed is a top contributing factor to these crashes. So to combat this, the province also announced that the existing red light camera program will be upgraded to identify and ticket the vehicles that are speeding through these intersections. And so we'll be announcing the 35 sites in the next coming months, and new signs will also warn approaching drivers about this enhanced enforcement in those areas. In addition to automated enforcement, we know that within these high-risk intersections, rear-end collisions are often the most frequent. So the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure has partnered with ICBC to identify 14 locations that would also benefit from the addition of high-friction surface treatment. This treatment improves friction, allowing drivers to stop more quickly, reducing the severity and number of collisions. And the first 14 of these locations will be installed in the spring. Also want to touch on a little bit on the legalization of cannabis. We know from our public engagement that there is a real concern about the impact of the legalization of cannabis on driving. And recently, BC conducted a roadside survey, which measures the prevalence of alcohol, drug-affected driving, compares long-term trends, and establishes a baseline for the measurement of now after cannabis has been legalized. So we hope to also release this report in the next month or so. On the legal side, the province has also passed legislation giving police new tools to remove drug-affected drivers from our roads. The province will introduce a 90-day administrative driving prohibition for drug-affected driving, as well as zero tolerance restriction for the presence of THC in the graduated licensing program. As we know, speed is a factor and that we know significantly impacts the severity of crashes, especially when compounded with changing weather conditions. So the Ministry of Transportation has also implemented variable speed signs in 3 locations throughout the province as part of a pilot project to help reduce the frequency and the severity of weather-related crashes. Ministry staff constantly review and monitor and analyze the data to help improve and optimize their recommended speed limits that will help to best meet the driver expectations and are in line with the current weather conditions. The goal of variable speed limits is to improve driver safety during these unfavorable weather conditions and to reduce serious crashes in areas where weather patterns change quickly, making driver conditions dangerous. Flashing lights are installed above each of these variable speed limit signs and are activated when a reduced speed limit is in effect. So with all the work that we are doing throughout the province with all of our road safety partners, how do we know that we are successful in working towards achieving Vision Zero? Our goal is to see a steady and consistent decline in fatalities and serious injuries, and BC has committed to tracking our progress both in fatality numbers as well as rate-based targets. Overall, BC has seen a decline in total motor vehicle fatalities from 411 in 2007 to 276 in 2017. In 2016, BC's fatality rate ranked 5th lowest in Canada at 6.1. And while BC has seen a steady decline overall, our fatality rate is still double the rate of the best performing jurisdictions in the world. And as mentioned, Sweden is one of those leading jurisdictions. So we know that there is more work to do if we want to reach our goals and work towards with our partners towards Vision Zero. So I want to offer a special thanks to the City of Surrey, working with us through the road safety strategy, as well as our working committees towards the ultimate goal of a future with 0 traffic fatalities and 0 serious injuries. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Erin. And that was such, it was so encouraging to hear about all the things that you're doing on the provincial level. You know, we're looking forward to hearing about the automated speed enforcement and also some of the other things that, you know, forward thinking towards the kind of challenges that are upcoming in terms of marijuana legalization as well. So thank you so much for making time, and there's a small gift of our appreciation. Thank you. Thank you so much. So I am so happy that Dr. Bonnie Henry was able to join us today. She's one of our keynote speakers, and she came all the way from Victoria as well. And for a while, we didn't know if she was going to make it, but I'm so happy, so welcome. I'd just like to say a few words about how amazing you are and how you've joined. Well, you know, I read your report, Rubber Meets the Road, and I haven't stopped talking about it. So, such great recommendations, such leadership. So you joined us as a provincial health officer on February the 1st, 2018. Preceding this, Dr. Henry served as the interim provincial executive director of the BC Centre for Disease Control, and also was the medical director for communicable disease prevention and control and public health emergency management with the BC CDC, and medical director for provincial emerging vector-borne diseases program. Wow. I don't even know if I know half of what that means, but you're a specialist in public health, preventive medicine, and you're board certified as a preventive medicine in the US. And you've come to us today to talk about the importance of road safety and also the impact it has on the health sector. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
reading somebody else's. And I'm really, really honored to be here today. And I'm really grateful that I was able to make it over. I did have a little bit of panic when I read the weather report, of course. And, you know, it's almost a little bit embarrassing because I'm an East Coaster. I'm from the Far East, from Prince Edward Island. And we're kind of used to winter, but I've been out here long enough that it's hard to think about actually going somewhere in the snow. But I'm happy I'm here. And I want to start off by recognizing that we are on the traditional and unceded territories of the Coast Salish people, particularly the Kwantlen, K'netsi, and the Semiahmoo First Nations. And I'm very grateful for the keepers of this land and that we're able to meet here today. I'm also, you may wonder why we're interested in road safety. And one of the key things that really is important to me is that safe streets are active streets, and safe streets therefore improve the health of the population. And that is my main concern in looking at this. So it actually, I didn't realize it, but it was in March 2016, so almost 3 years ago, that we put out this report, Where the Rubber Meets the Road. And this was when I was the Deputy Provincial Health Officer working with Dr. Perry Kendall. And I had taken over work on this report from my colleague, Eric Young, who was the Deputy Provincial Health Officer and had been very involved in putting this together for many years, and was deeply involved in coming up with some of the strategies around safer roads in British Columbia. And dozens of people and organizations were involved in putting this together. And it is an important, I think, for us, way of saying, here's some data that shows you what we can do and shows you how we are doing compared to other countries in the world that have taken action on this. So I'm going to present some updated data from that we had from the report and talk a little bit about why this is still so important and where we can make progress together. And I want to start off by thanking Megan and Farah from the Injury Research Unit who helped update the slides here and the numbers for us. Okay, so as we know, we've heard, motor vehicle crashes actually have, fatalities have been going down. And the rate per 100,000 has been going down. And when we came out with this report in 2016, we actually only had data up until 2013, and it had gone down quite nicely. What I'm concerned about is that we've now seen a little uptick. And that reflects a number of things, I think. There are some decisions made about speeds on highways that contributed to increasing crashes, despite some warnings from myself and others in the health side. And, being able to present data to people who make those decisions has led to many of those increasing speeds on some of the highways being reversed. So that's good news. Much of these declines that we've seen, though, over the last 10 years have been due to improvements to things like road engineering and vehicle safety, and many of those have reached some of the limits of what we're able to do. So we really need to think about what are the other aspects of road safety, particularly for vulnerable population, vulnerable road users, people who aren't as protected as those in trucks and cars. So some of the other things that we looked at, hospitalizations due to motor vehicle crashes decreased by quite significant amounts. When we looked at this in 2013, though, we look at it again and we're still plateaued. So now's an opportunity to look at this data and see what else can we do? What's next in trying to reverse this trend rather than the stable trend that we're seeing here? If we look at pedestrians, so now one of the major things that I wanted to look at was how we are able to take actions around vulnerable road users. And our pedestrian fatality count has gone down, but it's varied. And it really hasn't gone down significantly in a long time. And there are many things that we now recognize are still causing us issues, particularly for people who are walking on our streets. And as somebody who is a vulnerable road user, I don't actually own a car anymore, and I walk everywhere. And I'm very, very aware acutely every day of some of the just distractions and things that happen that make it challenge for me to walk. And one of my big pet peeves is one of the things that I've been trying to advocate for some time, and I'm hoping the city of Surrey will look at this too, is can we decrease the default speed limits in our cities and our communities to 30 miles per hour, or kilometers per hour? because that's the survivable rate for those of us who are out there walking on the streets. And that's one thing that I think we need to think about. This is some other data looking at other road. This is hospitalizations for pedestrians, and the number fluctuates over the years. And we're not doing as well as some other countries who put a specific attention in how do you separate vulnerable road users from cars and trucks. This is cyclist fatalities, another thing that is quite topical around the province. Many cities, including Victoria, Vancouver, looking at Surrey, have put in dedicated cycling lanes. And this makes a big difference when you have an ability to separate people, but these are not without controversy. And as we heard, you know, it's a very distracted world. Everybody wants to get there as fast as they can, and they're not always paying attention. So having the right barriers between people saves lives. If we look again at cyclist hospitalizations, it's pretty stable. We haven't seen a whole lot of change in this either. And in matter of fact, since the report came out, we've seen a bit of an uptick again. So that's challenging. It means that there's more for us to do. So that's just a little bit of the data. And I'm going to talk now about some of the things that came out of the report that we did. There were underlying principles that underlie the recommendations that came out in this report and recognize that some of this data can help us. So the three things that we know most affect motor vehicle collisions in this province are speed, and so that's inappropriate speed for the conditions. Impairment, and again, we want to be really careful. We know that things like the roadside prohibitions, the roadside I'm having the immediate roadside prohibitions for alcohol has had a dramatic effect on decreasing people who are driving impaired from alcohol. And we want to see the same things happen with cannabis and with other drug use on the roads. The other one is distraction. And despite having legislation that makes it illegal for people to text and to drive, we know that that is still happening far too often, and that people are often hurrying, they're rushed, and they're distracted. And those are some of the things that we need to pay more attention to. So the underlying principles that we have in the recommendations from our report, and that I encourage people to look at, are that viable alternatives to vehicle use must be meaningfully supported. So looking at public transit, how can we improve people's active participation in transit, active transportation in our communities? The public health and safe system approach, and I'm going to talk a little bit about that in a minute, and the health and protection of vulnerable road users, people who are walking, people who are biking, people who are on cycles. You know, these are the people who are more likely to have serious injuries or die. Collaboration and partnerships and communication are really the key, and that's where I think we're making some progress. So Vision Zero, as you heard about, is a policy that takes what we call an ethical approach towards achieving safety for all of the people who use our roads and our communities. And I think it is important to set a goal of zero fatalities and zero serious injuries, because without thinking of an aspirational goal like that, we really accept that it is okay for some people to die. And I don't think that's appropriate. I think we can achieve this, and we've seen it in other parts of the world and other parts of this country. When you set those types of targets, you focus people's attention on what is it that we can do to make things better. We need to acknowledge that we are all human and we're all fallible and mistakes will happen. So we need to do all of the things that we can do, both on the roads, with vehicles, with separating intersections, with all of the technical and engineering things that we can do to make it safer for people, even when they do make mistakes. And the highest level of responsibility is all of us, on the people who design the systems, the people who plan our transportation routes, looking at our healthy built communities together. So as you've heard, our British Columbia Road Safety Strategy in 2015 and beyond, which was released in 2013 by Road Safety BC, we actually adopted this zero traffic fatalities Vision Zero in British Columbia at that time. And it was based on, as we've heard, a number of different road safety partners across the province, and it continues to meet and be very active, and my office has been very involved with this since that time. So what we have adopted is what we call a safe system approach. And our report uses this approach as well. And I encourage people to go back and look at it because there's lots of different aspects of the safe system approach that we have some recommendations based on evidence. And there's some experts in the room today, which I can't see any of you either, which is a bit disconcerting up here. But there are experts like Tarek and Jeff Brubaker and Ian Pike who can give you the ideas that you need based on evidence to make the right decisions. And then really it's about recognizing that fatalities and serious injuries are preventable and that we can design roads and systems to anticipate and accommodate inevitable human error. So this commitment to Vision Zero principles, that traffic deaths and injuries are preventable, that human life and health are prioritized in our transportation system above people trying to get things in places fast. Safety work should focus on systems level changes, recognizing that it's not an individual thing and that speed really is prioritizes the fundamental factor in crash severity. So our efforts really need to build sustained leadership, collaboration, use data to drive the improvements that we're making, use data around intersections, around roadways, around how people act and react. Lead with roadway designs that do prioritize safety, and looking at how we manage speed in many different parts of our roadway system. So a Vision Zero city sets clear goals, has a mayor, our top official, who's officially committed, has a plan or a strategy in place, and has partners that work with this. And so I was looking at this and I thought, my gosh, the city of Surrey has looked at all of these things and really is a Vision Zero leader. And these are some of the commitments that they've made. And I really congratulate the mayor on pulling this together. So using data and analytics, targeting high collision intersections, I think that's an incredibly important piece of work. Rapid expansion of safe pedestrian crossings, separated cycle tracks, taking measures to slow speeds, and I would say 30 km/h minimums in the city, smart mobility initiatives, and using emerging technology. And I think really importantly, having that group of people that you saw standing up here all committed to doing this together. So I'm excited, and part of the gift that I bring to you is encouragement, is data, and congratulations to the City of Surrey. Okay, I wasn't sure.
It's okay. Thank you so much. Okay, thank you, Dr. Henry. That was a great overview of the public health perspective on road safety. Hello, everyone. My name is Megan Oakey. I am the Provincial Manager for Injury Prevention at the BC Centre for Disease Control, which is an agency of the Public Health Services Authority. And I am one of the co-hosts for this event. We'll now take a short break, I think until 10:55. That should give us about 15 minutes. So please help yourself to coffee and tea and snacks and visit the exhibition area. And we'll see you back in 15 minutes. I know. Yes, I know. You were smartly on the West Coast. Totally, I know, right? Ah, it's great. There are some bottles here, or 4. You want some on the table? Oh yeah, this will be over at I know myself, and I see something to try to write in the dark, and very Okay, maybe if they put the light on me, then they'll know it's time. Sorry? Maybe the light. Where's my spotlight? And then, oh, sorry, no, I mean like the one that then people will know it's time to get. There we go. Okay. Okay. All right. Can you hear me okay? Yep, okay. Great. Okay, welcome back everybody. We're a little behind schedule. So without further ado, we're gonna introduce our next speaker. Shh. I know it's so exciting. We get to see each other and don't get to do this very often. Okay, but we are behind schedule. So our next speaker that I would like to introduce, I have the pleasure of introducing actually my esteemed colleague, Dr. Ian Pike, who is the co-executive director of the Community Against Preventable Injuries, which you probably know better as Preventable. He's also professor of pediatrics at UBC, director of the BC Injury Research and Prevention Unit, and investigator at BC Children's Hospital Research Institute. His academic training is in health promotion and injury prevention with an emphasis on population health and the workplace. He has some 30 years experience in injury prevention and healthy lifestyle promotion and has worked in the private, nonprofit, and academic sectors. Welcome, Dr. Pike.
Thank you very much. I'm going to stand over here because those 30 years have resulted in some eyesight difficulties and I need to see the monitor. I think there is a slide presentation. There we go. So this morning, thank you very much indeed for the opportunity to be here. Congratulations to the City of Surrey for this initiative. I'm representing Preventable. the Community Against Preventable Injuries, that has had a social marketing campaign to reduce serious injuries in British Columbia since 2009. The way that we've developed and implemented that campaign is through conversation and discourse with British Columbians. And part of our continuing conversation with British Columbians is resulting in the project that I want to talk to you about today for a few minutes, and to seek your input. The campaign project is called Changing the Discourse. The objective here is to use public media influencers, members of the media, but also emergency services leaders, municipal leaders, and professionals and experts in the area of road safety to alter the conversation, and in particular, the language that we use. In our 10 years of work as Preventable, we have learned how important the conversation is and how important some of the particular language and particular words that we use are in shaping people's beliefs, attitudes, and their behaviors. We know words have power. How they are received, how they're given, can result in tremendous impacts upon people's understanding and their beliefs. They affect our understanding, our beliefs. They affect how people perceive reality. The current reality in British Columbia, despite all of our efforts, is still, unfortunately, that the majority believe injuries are an inevitable part of life. I've sat in focus groups and can't tell you how many times I've heard members of the public say, Ian, you live, you get hurt, get over it. We don't accept that belief. We don't accept that attitude. They believe that they're unavoidable, and they believe that they are accidents. Now, most of the people in this room have rebuked the word accident, but let's just remind ourselves what the definition is. It's an unfortunate incident that happens unexpectedly, unintentionally, typically resulting in damage or injury. It's an event that happened by chance, fate, without apparent or deliberate cause. And of course, all of you in this room, when you think about injuries related to motor vehicle crashes, would not accept the premise that this was an accident. And so most of us here have altered our language. Unfortunately, this word is still very prevalent, shaping attitudes and beliefs within the community. And I'm asking for your help in trying to change that, because it's leading to too many injuries and deaths on an annual basis. As it relates to transportation-related injuries in this province, 30,000 are injured severely enough on an annual basis to require medical attention, of which 350 people die on average. 5,000 hospitalizations, and 1,300 are left permanently disabled as a consequence. Changing the words that we use to speak about injury can change people's reality and their understanding. And we have evidence in other areas from our Preventable campaign that this is the case. We know that up to 90% of all injuries are not random. They're not unconnected, unpredictable events. They are indeed predictable and therefore preventable. This project is about recruiting public media influencers to spread the word and to change the language and that conversation. Of course, our key target are the journalists, announcers, reporters, writers, news anchors, particularly those that talk about traffic and the traffic situation. They are trusted, respected. British Columbians rely upon them for accurate, reliable, and truthful information. The words they use have power with the citizenry. They can change how those people see the reality, particularly around roads-related safety. Those media personalities, together with community leaders, emergency services leaders, police, fire, etc., we want to invite to harness the power of that media and change the reality by changing the discourse. By spreading the word, we can change this. We know that. The objectives are to engage those people, to change the discussion, and ultimately to reduce the social and economic burden of injuries in British Columbia to zero, as we've heard repeatedly this morning. We have very recently, just last week, sent out 300 media personality kits. Some of you may have received them as a consequence. They consist of a little desktop reminder. It's a coffee mug. And the challenge is, still calling it an accident? Seriously? That goes together with an information booklet, which invites people to read a little more background and a little more of the evidence in support of this campaign so that they may assist and be part of this changing the discourse. We're inviting you today to join these people who've stepped up to lend their name. Dr. Verinder Bad, Justice Wally Opal, Mr. Sham Shen, CEO of BCAA, and Dr. Emily Newhouse, Public Health Officer for Vancouver Coastal, all of whom have lent their names to this campaign for various professional and very personal reasons. Dr. Verinder Bad, I supervised in a PhD program after her parents were killed by a drunk driver. Her entire PhD was changing or trying to understand the discourse and the use of the word accident in the criminal justice system, in the health systems in British Columbia, and how it impacted on her family's journey of recovery. She is an outspoken, wonderful individual who has come forward to allow her family story to support this campaign, and we're most grateful. I invite you to join her. What you can do at the end of the day is consider all other words that can replace accident, particularly when you're talking about road-related injury and death, and the efforts that you're going to undertake in the Vision Zero systems journey. Vision Zero is about a safe system. It's been described to you by our previous presenters. We believe very strongly and have the evidence that's emerging from the Preventable campaign that says that system is further supported when the conversation and the discourse that describes it and moves it forward is appropriate. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your attention this morning. I hope you will join us in this very important initiative that we're running.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Pike, for that important, cheers, presentation. I would now like to please welcome back to the stage Shabnam Afzal, Road Safety Manager for the City of Surrey and the Chair of the Organizing Committee for the BC Vision Zero Summit. She is an established public safety leader with a background as a policy professional and university researcher, and Shabnam has worked internationally across all levels of government in various areas of crime reduction, road safety, and social policy. Her passion for innovation led her to work with the Organised Crime Unit of Scotland Yard in the UK, where she led the creation of performance measurement frameworks in several areas of policing. A published author in leading UK journals, Shabnam has been influential in shaping national policy on several controversial public safety issues. In 2018, Shabnam joined the City of Surrey as Manager of Road Safety. She and her team have developed a new Vision Zero safe mobility plan to eliminate death and serious injuries on Surrey's roads. She is leading a road safety team to undertake a holistic, cross-sectoral and collaborative effort towards having the safest roads in Canada. Welcome, Shabnam.
Thank you. That's quite the introduction. Well, thank you. That was quite the introduction. Yes, I'm really proud to introduce you to our Vision Zero Safe Mobility Plan today. And our civic leaders have endorsed this plan. Sorry, excuse me 1 second. And by endorsing this plan, they've actually set into motion all the actions that we will take now to help people stay alive when they use our roads and not be injured. So the World Health Organization has actually called this a global epidemic. If you think about it, 1.35 million people are killed annually on the world's roads. And those aged between 5 and 29 are actually, that's the leading cause of death for those people. So young people who are dying. And also the other thing that we've heard about earlier today and will be stressed again in the Vision Zero Surrey plan is that vulnerable road users, those people who don't have the protection of infrastructure around them, people like pedestrians, cyclists, and motorcyclists, they're overrepresented in those numbers. And before we move away from this slide, I'd just like you to consider what you've heard today and also the video that you watched earlier today. These aren't just numbers, they're people. They're human beings with families, their friends, their neighbors, they're our co-workers, and no loss of life is acceptable. Everyone has the right to safe mobility. So no matter who we are, where we're going, whether it be to work, to school, to just for leisure activities, and how we're getting there, whether we choose to be healthy and walk or cycle, or whether we need to drive, we deserve to get there safely. And that's where we're starting from in Surrey now. We've already heard collisions are preventable. These are not accidents. They're not inevitable, but we have to change our mindset. And it's actually quite a challenge, as you've heard from Dr. Pike here. It's not that simple. And we have to start by changing our dialogue around that. And we have to consider that safety is a precondition for mobility. It's not mobility regardless of what we lose. Human life is the highest priority. It's a huge shift in philosophy. We always hear about people complaining about how they're stuck in traffic and there's so much congestion. You know, we need to change that dialogue, as Ian said. It's more about, well, you know, what is the cost to mobility? It should not be serious injury, debilitating injuries, and death. The transportation system needs to protect us when we use it. And as we've heard, we're only human, we're fallible, we make mistakes. And those transportation systems that we use need to forgive those mistakes. They need to be forgiving enough that we don't end up dead or injured. So what we're doing, again, there's been a lot of emphasis on this about system level changes. It's not one piece of the puzzle that you change and miraculously you're going to have an end to death and injury. No, it's about the whole system. We need to rethink the way we put our policies in place. We need to redesign our roads, and we need to keep our road users safe. And behavior change, which has been traditional philosophy around road safety practitioners, and is not actually that easy to do. The research tells us actually that's actually one of the most challenging things to do. It takes a lot of time to do that. We've seen people now, they're beginning to wear seatbelts, and there's less people distracted driving. And that's all very encouraging, but we actually have to create systems in a holistic way so we can challenge those numbers that we saw earlier. Speed is prioritized. It's pretty simple, really. If you go fast in your vehicle, you have a much higher likelihood of being in a collision. We simply are not made that way. Our brains don't function in a way that the speed of a car. It's just, we take time to process these things, and there's complex road environments. We can't always predict what's going to happen. So we need to slow down. And it's a fundamental factor in collision severity. As you heard from Dr. Bonnie Henry earlier, the slower speed limits mean that you increase the likelihood of survival in a collision. So that's why in Surrey, we really have taken the safe systems approach to heart. We've decided that this is the way we are going to structure our interventions and all the work that we do. So again, safe, I'm going to go through these a bit more, but not too much detail, because I know that there's copies of our plan available here today, and you can take one and read a bit more about what we're doing. But at the center of the safe systems approach really is the human tolerance to physical force. Our bodies are not made to take that level of force. If we come into contact with a vehicle moving at a high speed, we will be hurt, whether we're in a vehicle, whether we're walking, cycling, or on a motorbike. So Safe Roads talks about separating road users in time and space and prioritizing safety in the design. There's lots of things that we do across our cities, across our city departments, across various levels of government, that we can actually incorporate a road safety lens to that work. It's not just about changing everything that we do going forward, but it's also examining things that we're currently doing and looking for opportunities to incorporate safety into those decisions, into decisions around design, into capital planning, and having that foresight to think, well, if I do this, what's going to happen? How is safety going to be impacted? Of course, we've heard human life has to be important and has to be at the center of all of this. Safe speeds, again, we've heard a lot about this, and that's because it's such an important factor in Vision Zero. It's one of the pillars of Vision Zero, in fact. So safe speeds for the road environment. We can do lots when we do our engineering designs. We can slow vehicles down. We can also have speed enforcement from our partners, the police. And we heard again from Erin Anderson earlier today about automated speed enforcement. We know that's proven to save lives all over the world. It can have up to, I mean, you'll hear more about that from our speed panel, but it can save, and it's about up to 60% level of reduction in injury collisions. And safe road users. Of course, we can build the best system ever. We can make the fabulous roads, we can make raised crosswalks, we can do leading pedestrian intervals, all of those amazing things that we will do, but we do rely on people to follow the rules. And that, you know, it's not okay to break the rules. We need to enhance enforcement in those areas, and we will. We know now what our issues are. We know that distracted driving, for example, is the leading cause of collisions in the province. And then that's all followed quite quickly behind by impaired driving. And we've heard today about the concerns and the emerging trends around marijuana use and polydrug use. We'll hear more about that later from our experts. So we need to target our work on those problem behaviors, on those rule breakers. And as Erin spoke about the various penalties, enhancements that's coming into play, that's really going to help cities and municipalities to take action as well. Safe vehicles, vehicle safety. And you know, everyone's heard of Tesla, right? Yeah, okay, good, I thought so. So, you know, there's lots of progress happening, and it's happening so fast. And tomorrow we've got an amazing speaker who's going to talk about the role of technology, autonomous vehicles, etc. And but it's mind-blowing. So we can have vehicles even today now that have all sorts of safety features enhanced. And I've heard from ICBC that they're looking at lowering premiums for those vehicles that have automated braking systems as a proxy for safety measures. And also we have connected and autonomous vehicles. So some people say, hey, you know what? In 10 years, we may never have any collisions if we're all driving autonomous vehicles. That's a great dream, but we still have to go towards Vision Zero. We still have to make those actions happen because we can't wait for those autonomous vehicles. In the global context, I spoke earlier about the 1.3 million people who are dying on our roads. Well, what does that mean? Is it just developing countries? Is it countries that are yet to build their road systems or yet to educate their road users? No, actually, no, that's not the case. This is a global epidemic. So we've heard about how Europe, we've had great successes where they've adopted Vision Zero. And I myself, obviously you may hear from my accent, I'm from the UK. We have some of the lowest levels of injuries and fatalities on our roads. And that's because we've adopted holistic approaches in our planning, in our road measures, and we've adopted Vision Zero. So 2,000 people die on Canada's roads. So you see, it's not just developing countries. And 300 people die on BC's roads. That's our call to action. I came here, we looked at the data, and this is what we found. Each year, 20 people killed on Surrey's roads, and 12,000 are injured. Every hour, one person is injured on Surrey's roads. Every day, crashes are costing us over $1 million in Surrey alone. Every month, more than one person is killed. Every year, injury collisions have gone up 3%. So this is our vision. Surrey has 0 people killed and seriously injured on its roads, and human life is valued above all else in the transportation network. I'm sure you're thinking that's a pretty bold statement. It's aspirational. It's aspirational, but I think we can make it a reality. Working together with all of you that are here today, putting a sea change into place, we can make this happen. We'll do this by using our mission. We're working in collaboration, like I said. We know that the mandate for road safety doesn't belong to a single agency. It doesn't belong to a single organization or a single level of government. It belongs to many different sectors. And that's why it's so important to have this dialogue, the dialogue that we're having today and over the next 2 days. We're going to use a data-driven approach. And we've got some amazing people here at our team in Surrey. And we're using statistics from ICBC and RCMP. And we're going to look at the research evidence. Why is it that this is happening the way it is? How can we make it better? What's more effective? So we're going to ensure that we target our resources. Those are finite resources. I'm sure everybody agrees we're all in the same situation there, but we're going to target them to where they're going to have the most impact. And that's going to be driven by the data. Also, we know that equity is something we need to consider. Not everybody is suffering the same level of harm on our roads. We already know that victims of harm and our focus areas are vulnerable road users. They're overrepresented, even though cyclists, pedestrians, and motorcyclists only make up 5% of the commuting trips in Surrey. They actually present 50% of traffic fatalities. Let's just think about that. Why? And that's what we need to tackle. As I said, we've mapped out our data onto the Surrey map. And what we found out was that there were certain areas of the city where more harm occurs. What we found was that 65% of our injury collisions and our fatal collisions happen on only 5% of our roads. And they seem to be focused into areas, into our city center areas. These areas actually, you can imagine there's more people. They're more complex road environments, and there's different types of road users, and there's more potential for conflict, and that's when we get these collisions. We also know that 80% of our killed and seriously injured collisions take place at intersection locations. Again, that's where we all merge, and there's all sorts of potential. So that, while it's very disturbing, gives us a really good indication where we need to start, and we have started. Our focus areas also include perpetrators of harm. Like I said before, no matter what we do, we also do rely on all of us, the whole community, all of our road users to follow the rules of the road, whether you're driving, whether you're a pedestrian, whether you're cycling or a motorcycle, you still need to follow the rules of the road. And of course, we've got these emerging trends now with different types and modes of transportation. And they will bring with them lots of opportunities for healthy living, but also some considerations for those who have to design safety around that. So again, distracted driving, I've already talked about, is a leading contributor of death and fatalities on our roads. We need to tackle this. We need to be more creative in the technologies that we use. We need to leverage all of those innovations that are out there to help us to reduce these problems. And our focus areas, when we looked at our data, we found that certain sectors of our population, not just our vulnerable road users, but certain sectors, depending on who they are actually overrepresented in the hospital data. In the Fraser Health data, for example, we found that Indigenous populations were really overrepresented in terms of injuries, collisions, and fatalities on our roads. And so we're working with our Indigenous community. We're working with the Surrey Indigenous Urban Leadership Groups and others as well to look to see what are those issues. That's one of the first things that we're looking at, is doing some more research, because we don't understand fully what is leading them to be overrepresented in our numbers. So we're going to embed equity in all our decision making. When we put our resources into engineering or any of our countermeasures, we will actually be looking to see who's benefiting, and is this money, is this resources going to where they're needed most. So what will our actions be? I've touched on a few of them, but to be more specific, some more highlights. The top 50 high collision intersections, we're going to implement targeted safety improvements based on their crash profiles. So when I say crash profiles, what I'm talking about is the characteristics, the nature, the triggers of those incidents, what's behind them. There's lots we can learn. We'll do road safety audits and really do a deep dig into that, because I think rather than just saying, oh, well, that place looks dangerous, so they've got some more collisions there, let's fix it. We don't know what we're doing if we take that attitude. We really need to understand it so much more. We can be more effective when we do that. Another thing that we're doing is leading pedestrian intervals. We've already started doing them, quite a few of them across the city. But what they do is give pedestrians a head start so they're more visible to drivers when they're in a crosswalk. And they've been proven already to reduce vehicle and pedestrian collisions by 58% or 59%. And we'll do more of those. Cycle tracks, it's a no-brainer, isn't it? When you separate road users, you can get up to 90% reduction in cyclist vehicle collisions. So we're doing that. And other targeted actions, as you heard from some of our partners today, we've got targeted and proactive enforcement. We work in partnership and we address those areas of speed and impairment and distraction. We can help each other by sharing our data, by whenever we put an intervention in place, for example, when our enforcement partners go out there, we can also do some education campaigns around there. And whenever we put some new things, new interventions in place, like for example, speed calming, we can also add some engagement around that. There's so many things we can do, but when we do them in a holistic way, that's when they have the most impact. So we're including our community because we understand how important they are. And our leaders really understand how important it is also to include our community. We've developed this plan actually using a lot of community engagement, stakeholder consultation, and you can read more about that in our document. But what we're doing is we're doing equitable and data-driven campaigns, not just random. We're partnering with our communities and we're asking them, what's of concern to you? And it's not always just about the danger that we face, the real danger. It's also sometimes about how safe we feel. And that actually impacts on people's quality of life. So I think that's an important thing to incorporate. So we're using intelligent transportation systems, vehicle to infrastructure communication, and autonomous vehicles. And like I said, we'll hear more about that tomorrow, but there's also our Smart Cities event that's taking place tomorrow on the Plaza. If you want to learn more and go ride with Ella, you can do that. And sorry, Jamie, not to steal your thunder there. Our partners, so again, like, as I said before, this is a collaborative approach. This is a partnership, and we talk every single day. We speak to our partners. We say, hey, you know, what do you think about this? We pick up the phone, and we don't hesitate, because we know that it's only when we work together that we can really make change happen. Thank you for listening. And before we move away from this area of Vision Zero and evidence-led practice, I'd like to welcome our panelists to the front, please. And, oh, let me get my speaking notes. Can we please have Lacey Hurtle join us from the City of Vancouver? Yes. Sorry, 1 second. All our panelists for the data-led Vision Zero, please join. Thank you. I'll find my speaking notes in just 1 second. Erin Anderson, Darren Grindell, and Dana Dickman. Thank you so much. I will be the moderator for this panel, and I will ask our panelists to actually just take a second to introduce themselves.
I'm Lacey Hurtle from the City of Vancouver. I'm the Senior Traffic Safety Engineer.
Erin Anderson, Senior Manager of the Road Safety Strategy with Road Safety BC.
I'm Darren Grindell. I'm the Director of the Washington Traffic Safety Commission. I came up from Olympia, Washington, and it's a great honor to be here. And I met Shabna back in June, I think,
That's
at the CARS conference, and an opportunity to share some of the lessons and some of the pitfalls that we had as we went into our Target Zero. And so it's a great opportunity to be here.
Great. I know that Lacey has a presentation. Would you like to please step to the podium and do your presentation, and then we can take some, oh, sorry, Dana. My bad.
I'm not sure I know how to use this.
Not only do I not introduce you, I do not let you introduce yourself.
Is it working? I'm Dana Dickman with the City of Portland. I'm the Traffic Safety Section Manager. I manage our Vision Zero program. We're about 2 years into implementing our Vision Zero plan, so we're excited to share what we've learned so far.
And just before you start, Lacey, we're going to hear a lot more from our panelists later on. They're actually speaking, and they're going to teach us a bit about what's worked for them. So sorry about that. Don't try and multitask ever. Okay, Lacey, please go.
First, I'd like to thank you and your team, Shabna, for inviting us to share today about Vision Zero. It's a pleasure to be here. Also, I'd like to just clear the air as to why ours is not called Vision Zero at the City of Vancouver. At the time that it was adopted, our mayor and many of our councillors were from a party called Vision Vancouver. And so going with Vision Zero was not seen as a wise move. So we were challenged with going with something else. So we have chosen moving towards zero. And moving on, transportation, I don't have a clicker.
Oh, sorry. Take it.
So in 2012, Council received Transportation 2040, which was our ambitious plan of moving forward. Within Transportation 2040, we embedded the goal of moving towards zero traffic-related fatalities and serious injuries, as well as the ambitious goal of 2/3 sustainable modes of transportation. Oh, I'm going too far back now.
Oh, sorry. Maybe you can do this.
So in 2016 is when we presented our action plan to council of moving towards zero. And our action plan was founded on 5 E's: enhanced data, evaluating and prioritizing locations, engineering actions, enforcement, and education and public engagement. And the enhanced data piece, we wanted to understand where had we come from and where were we going with this. And so as you can see, the population of Vancouver continues to increase. And over the last 20 years, we've seen a decrease in our fatalities on our streets. And that's encouraging, but it's not for us to stop and say, oh, we're doing so great. We just need to keep going. Another piece of the enhanced data is to work with our partners. We've reached out to several of them to gain the data that they have, the hospitals, the emergency services, VPD, and ICBC. And as we looked at that data, we saw the same trends that we've already talked about today. We need to focus on our most vulnerable road users. In Vancouver, 15% of the population is represented by seniors, but they represent 40% of our fatalities. Similarly, of the 15 fatalities that we see every year, about 65% is between cyclists and pedestrians. And the other vulnerable road user that we wanted to focus on is children. So this map is just showing, once we collected all of that information, we could see our corridors and our locations that we need to focus to make improvements for these vulnerable road users. We also have a school program that allows us to work directly with the Vancouver schools, and Liliana Quintero, who's on my team, will give a deeper dive into this program this afternoon. So I encourage you to attend that. The third part is the engineering toolkit, and many of the things that Shabnam already highlighted that Surrey will be looking at doing and have already been doing, we're doing in Vancouver as well. Things like new signals, those cost a lot, but we can also do things that are much less costly by just adjusting the walking speed for people to cross the street and not get stuck in the intersection. Similarly, we've tried rectangular rapid flashing beacons, or RFBs, audible signals, and LPIs, things that we can implement quickly and not as costly, but still make a safety improvement. So this is a map showing a lot of the things that came out of our data and the measures that we've used to counter those high collision locations. The fourth piece is enforcement. We work with our VPD regularly. We meet monthly, where it's a knowledge sharing. We ask them, have you seen anything? Have your traffic officers seen anything on the street that we need to be aware of? And vice versa. If we get citizen feedback and complaints, we pass that along to them. As well as working with we have community policing centers, and ICBC coordinates that with us to be able to liaise with them and work with people within the community. And the fifth piece is the education and engagement. And Shabnam highlighted, and it's been highlighted already this morning, the importance of keeping the discourse open. We report back every year to our council to show what we've been doing with our Moving Towards Zero plan, but we also do other things. We just recently commissioned a traffic safety song from a local musician who will be providing that song for us. I just got the email on March 1st, so it's not live yet. But he'll be performing at our schools. And the song is not just about safety for children. He focused on safety for seniors as well. So it's a duet, and look for it on our website. But we're trying to do these things that are a little bit more innovative to keep the conversation going with people. Last September, we hosted a hackathon where we opened up our data sets to the local tech industry so that they could have an opportunity to help us with the challenge of moving towards zero more quickly. And we had them focus on the same areas: seniors, pedestrians, cyclists, and children and community amenities. And that was coordinated with Calgary and Toronto, who also did Vision Zero hackathons last year.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to open the floor now to questions. So please feel free to stand up and ask any questions of the panelists, including myself. You'll have to stand though, because we can't see you from here with all these lights in it. So I know we have a number of different municipalities here who may want to learn. Great.
I noticed that on your enforcement slide, you noted that police would be targeting enforcement against reckless and unsafe behavior of pedestrians and cyclists in high crash locations. Now, City of Vancouver's own commission reports indicate that in cases of cyclist and pedestrian crashes, in the large majority of cases, in fact, it's the driver that's largely or entirely responsible. So I'm wondering whether that isn't a bit of victim blaming, and why we aren't seeing police enforce behaviors on the motorists that cause these crashes, rather than targeting cyclists and pedestrians.
So I just want to highlight that we are trying to be equitable. So instead of just saying it's always the driver's fault, we want to recognize that we're all fallible. We've already talked about this. So we're saying, yes, there are opportunities to talk to cyclists and to talk to pedestrians as well about their own behaviors. So it's not, I know the slide kind of highlighted pedestrians and cyclists, but it's more to the fact that we are trying to be equitable. We're looking at every mode and trying to make sure that peace is an opportunity to engage and educate with people.
Jump in on that question as well. From Washington State, we've had our Target Zero plan for the last almost 19 years. And so we go through and do a lot of data analysis. You kind of dig by, just beyond just it's car centric. It's a whole system that works. It's cars, trucks, motorcycles, pedestrians, bicycles. And when we've pulled the data on pedestrians and bicyclists, we have found that almost 45 to 50% of those were impaired and were actually pulled out in front of a car or actually stepped out in front of a car, or even with the cell phones, you get what we call pedextrians, where they're just totally engrossed in their text and they've walked right in front of a bus. So there's like Hawaii, I think, has actually enacted some legislation over there where they have ordinances where you cannot walk and text, or you could be cited because it has become such a problem. And we have created a pedestrian advisory council and a bicycle advisory council. And many of the advocates that came in were very much, let's make it all the car's fault until we've actually proven otherwise. And that became quite a controversy. And haven't gone that way, but looking at the overall data, is where are we seeing those challenges that, if there's a high, maybe a lot of bars or something and they're walking home, because what do we say? Don't drink and drive. And what do? They begin walking, and maybe they're so impaired that they walk into the road. On some of our tribal nations, we actually have people that have fallen or actually have passed out in the roadway, and there's no lighting. And the next thing we know, that a driver has driven over that person. And we've seen that frequently. So it's trying to get a message out to both pedestrians and drivers with kind of this idea of safety citizenship. We all take part of that responsibility, not just the driver, but also pedestrians, bicycles. And yes, there's a lot of issues where the driver is just not paying attention. But how do we get that interaction with a system that works together? So piece of that, yeah.
Too. The way that Portland has worked through some of these issues, we have some similar data that shows that it's about 50-50 when pedestrians and cyclists are hit. Either the pedestrian didn't yield the right of way or the driver didn't yield the right of way. But we go out in teams with police to high crash intersections and high crash corridors, and the police work the roadway and pull over drivers. And the DOT staff works at transit stops and talks to pedestrians and talks to people biking, and is sharing it more about in an education on operating safely in the roadway and sharing about what's happening on that particular corridor. Because usually we have our high crash corridors are bad for all, people walking, people biking, and people driving. So it's a way of recognizing that everybody does have that shared responsibility, but also recognizing that when you're driving a vehicle, you have the potential to cause a lot of damage. So the police are citing the drivers, and we're talking to people biking and walking.
And I know the question mentioned enforcement, but one piece of the community toolkit that through the road safety strategy that I mentioned earlier, the first module is actually explains interventions that can be taken to protect people walking and cycling, so specifically for vulnerable road users. And I think it's you know, the idea of separating people in space and time. And so, you know, when there are the intersections of drivers and vulnerable road users, it is just taking that extra step to ensure that that vulnerable population is protected. When, as we mentioned, Vision Zero, we all make mistakes, but ensuring that you know, that when there is an incident, that it doesn't result in serious injury or a fatality.
I will just add too, when you talk about equity, one of the things that we've been doing as far as our Target Zero plan is looking at equity and where are your investments. Now you talk about those that have maybe from marginalized communities, maybe from those from the indigent communities. Do they have the type of facilities that maybe more of the affluent have? And we've seen even in our own state where they have better facilities in more affluent communities, they might be more involved with their city councils. So they might get projects that actually address that. So for pedestrians, bicycles, take a look at those types of facilities that you actually have. And then, you know, are you actually making investments across the board equally or just in certain areas? And another thing to consider is where are your transit stops compared to office buildings, residential communities. So we've seen where our transit folks are actually changing some of their own bus routes because they were dropping them off on one side and pedestrians had to go over all the way across to get to the other. So look at those pieces. And we've actually incorporated some of that as part of our strategic planning. So
that's a really good point, actually, about, you know, having a broader view of safety. And I really liked what you said about having, it's a shared responsibility. We all do need to follow the rules of the road, and that's when the system works. So I think that's really good points. Any other questions from the audience? Yes.
What about speed limits? We've heard a lot today already, hearing from different groups about that lower speed limits cause less severe injuries. And maybe interested on the point of view from the BC folks on a panel about where are we today and making changes at a provincial level to speed limits, and what do we need to do from where we are today to get that accomplished?
I think that's a question for you, Erin.
Yeah, thanks. So recently, the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure actually did a review on most of the BC highways. And so they actually did institute a reduction on some of those highways. And after reviewing the data, having a full analysis of all of those roads. So that's good news. It was, as Dr. Bonnie Henry mentioned earlier, a recommendation from the public health perspective, as well as road safety advocates as well. And so I know that has been done, but I know that there is also work within municipalities. So maybe I will look to also some of the municipal folks here to just talk about some of the planning as well around the city planning and speed limits in that area.
So in Vancouver currently, we have areas of slower speed around schools and parks, as well as our bikeways are reduced speed. They're down to 30 kilometers per hour. It's also on my work plan to continue to look at the data to see and propose to our council what more we can do in terms of our other streets. We recently met with someone from the city of Stockholm to talk about their right speeds for their city streets. The document that they produced, we're trying to get an English copy. So if anybody knows how to translate, that would be great. Because theirs is really a great example of how it may not be a reduction for arterials. It may be that the arterials stay at 50 kilometers or 60 kilometers, depending on what's right for that street. And I think that's a really great approach. Where you have a local street, it should not be 50 kilometers per hour and look the same as an arterial.
The city of Portland is getting fairly aggressive on speed reductions. one of the challenges we face is that our state DOT actually controls the speed limits on our roads. And so we have to ask the DOT for a speed reduction on every single segment of roadway. And they currently use the framework of 85th percentile speeds that many of you are probably familiar with, that the speed is set based on what 85% of folks are going, which has no basis in safety research. I'm just going to say that.
That's good.
So what we have been trying to do is work within the framework that we have, which requires us to ask the state DOT and sort of aggressively use every bit of authority we have, including rescinding down to statutory speeds. That allows us to bring it down to 25 miles per hour on like collector streets. We went to the state legislature in the last round and we're able to reduce local streets, residential streets, down to 20 miles per hour. We're the only city in the state that is allowed to do that. And we have a bill pending in the legislature right now to try to get local control of speed setting. I'm not sure that it will be successful. It will be a challenge, I will say. But where we're trying to get to is that none of our arterials within the city would be posted at over 30 miles per hour because of that recognition that we are an urban environment. There are people walking, biking, taking transit and driving on every single street in our city. And those interactions will mean that if someone does make a mistake at over 30 miles per hour, somebody's not going to survive. And so that's where we're trying to really be aggressive on bringing speeds down in those environments where we know we have multiple road users.
Good point. Thank you. Yes?
Hi, I wonder if anybody thought about implementing no right turn on red light for vehicles. How is it? Will it be more helpful to implement on every intersection? Because I think most collisions between car and bicycle pedestrian happens in the intersection when they turn right.
Can people hear the question or the microphone?
Did you hear the question? We have some in the city of Vancouver where we have banned the right turn on red, most specifically where we have separated bike lanes. We have also seen the left turn as being a high collision data set as well.
Yeah, we work with our Pedestrian Advisory Council, and one of the representatives there is from the city of Seattle, and they've actually made most of their intersections no left turn. Because you look at the A pillar post and the B post, and some of those actually blind some drivers when they're making that turn and they don't see the pedestrian or a bicyclist coming over, that they've actually made, there's certain times of the day that you can't turn left and some you can't ever turn left. And I think is it UPS and FedEx, I think actually only have a right turn policy. And so for those reasons, and then they have also contemplated putting in some no right turn areas, especially in really high pedestrian intersections, and especially during certain times of the day. So those were alternatives, I think, that they had to work with traffic and with the walking public. Now with Amazon downtown Seattle and the number of people that are coming in, you can't even really drive downtown Seattle if you've been there lately. It is a completely different world. And especially now what we see with our aging population, when you see a vehicle with an aging person, their bodies are not really, like you mentioned, they can't handle some of those crashes, even at lower speeds. So they've actually tried to reduce a lot of that, those turns within the city of Seattle. And we're also seeing other municipalities taking on that same position. So.
Thank you. Thank you for your question. We have time for a really quick question if anyone's got a really pressing one. Otherwise, okay, yes.
And one of them in particular that I'm thinking about is in a real high pedestrian area. And what we ended up doing because if you prohibit the right turns on red, you're actually introducing more right turns on the green one that parallel pedestrian. Now they've got a little, they don't have the sight lines of the pillars, the A pillar and the B pillar, but what we've done is actually implemented a right turn phase that comes on concurrently with another phase that already precludes that pedestrian movement. And so we're using the signal program to separate those two modes by time.
This is the wonderful thing about getting lots of different sectors and professionals in the room. There's great learnings to be had. Well, I'd just like to thank you very much, all of you panelists, and look forward to hearing more from you as the day proceeds, but thank you so much. So sorry, I didn't.
Hi, everybody. My name is Jamie Bowen. I'm the manager of transportation for City of Surrey, and I'm thrilled to see so many people here. The morning has been very informative. This panel was very interesting in some of the actions taken. You've heard the importance of the road safety. That's why you're all here. We've heard how it's preventable. These are collisions, not accidents. And I want to highlight that we call it Vision Zero, but to me, it's not a vision, it's an imperative. We have to take action. All of us have to work together. We have to make a difference. You heard some of the panelists here and some in the audience of actions they are taking, differences they're making. It gives me great pleasure to introduce the next two speakers who are from San Francisco and who have had great success down there since introducing Vision Zero in 2014. So we've got two speakers. First is Hava Cronenberg, and the second one is Shamsi Sultani. So Hava is the pedestrian manager for San Francisco's transportation agency and is the Vision Zero Task Force co-chair. She's accountable for delivering complete street projects to reduce the annual injuries and fatalities that occur on their streets. Second speaker, Shamsi, is the Vision Zero I'm going to struggle on this one, epidemiologist in the program on health equity and sustainability. And it's particularly interesting to have her here as they're taking a very different approach there and involving individuals that aren't traditionally done in other cities. So she works with the Department of Public Health for San Francisco. She stewards the citywide transportation-related injury surveillance system, which combines hospital, police, emergency response, and other data to create more accurate, coordinated, and timely monitoring of transportation-related injuries and deaths. So with that, I invite you to the stage to speak.
Hi all, this is a glaring light. Now I understand what everyone else is talking about. My name is Hava Cronenberg. I was introduced, thank you very much. This is my colleague Shamsi Sultani. She is joining me up here and she'll be doing the most interesting slides. I know everybody's ready for lunch. So we are gonna skip the boring slides and only get to the really meaty, interesting ones. Again, I work for the SFMTA, which is both the Department of Transportation, so street safety function, and additionally our transportation agency, our transit department. So we both are responsible for every signal in the city and historic rolling cable cars. So that makes us a very unique and special agency. We're expansive. Which is the next button? Anybody? Help? How do I hit next? Oh. Again, this is a slide you've all seen from every city here. We lose on average 30 people every year on the streets of San Francisco. They're treated at Zuckerberg San Francisco General Hospital. That is, we are in the new Gilded Age here in San Francisco. All our hospitals are named after our tech moguls now. The other one is Benioff for Salesforce fame. And a significant amount of our time in our hospital is spent on treating traffic victims. And that's why I'm so pleased to be here with my colleague Shamsi, because she's going to talk specifically about how we're using our hospital data and helping that to inform our traffic decisions and our street safety program. Regardless of whether you have a Facebook page or not. This is our current data. It's great to work with Shamsi because I had the slide and I only had it up to 2017 because that was my most recent data. She's like, no, we got 2018. So we have seen a reduction in our fatalities since we adopted Vision Zero, and we had our least deadly year on record in 2017 with a slight uptick in 2018. And the pieces to the left are talking about the vulnerable road users. So we've heard a lot about vulnerable road users, and our story is no different. And that is why the pedestrian program manager, who is me, is the person also responsible for Vision Zero, because the people that are most likely to die are pedestrians. Our commitment to Vision Zero, and behind it is our first protected intersection in the city at 9th and Division, and I hope you'll all come down. I'm gonna run through some slides that show our great capital program. Frankly, I understand that I know our green bike lanes are put to shame by Vancouver. We subscribe to the safe system approach, and we subscribe to the core principles of Vision Zero, and you've already heard them, but they start with saving lives, that our focus is on preventing severe injuries and fatalities, understanding that collisions happen, mistakes happen, but they shouldn't be fatal. We have a strong commitment to equity, which both means vulnerable road users, but also our communities who are most likely to experience a traffic collision, and they don't look like me. We are thoughtful about our speed approach and thinking about safe streets, safe people, and safe vehicles, and how they all work together to make sure that those collisions don't occur. So this is how we organize ourselves generally, and you see the logos to the left. So we spent a lot of pages on logos, but ours includes our fire department, our police department, our public works department, and of course at the top is MTA and public health, who are our co-task force owners and are responsible for working with our community to talk about Vision Zero. So again, here come my pretty slides. Oh no, I thought they were up, but they're not. We spend about $65 million per year annually on improving our streets, but a subset of those core principles is that we have a really limited number of resources. And so our resources need to be applied in the places where they're most likely to make an impact. And so we were the first city to adopt this high injury network, and we were so pleased to see every other city kind of come forward and with their own focused areas where they're going to make improvements, including clearly here in the city of Surrey, which is excellent. Those blue lines are our 13% of streets with our 75% of severe injuries and fatals. And those $65 million have become these projects in the last 5 years. So most of them are focused in our downtown, where of course we have the highest rate of people walking and biking. And so I hope that you'll all come to visit and ride on our green bike lanes. They're mostly green bike lane pictures because those photograph well, but I assure you we do quite a lot more than just green bike lanes. This is Upper Market, and this is directly before the intersection of Market Octavia, where we lost Kevin Manning, a wheelchair user, and it also has the highest rate of pedestrian and cyclist collisions in our city. And for the first time, we've started protecting our cyclists as they approach the intersection, and we're continuing to always evolve that intersection design. It also has one of our very few red light cameras. This is the wiggle. So if you know San Francisco, we've got some hills, and we try to let cyclists avoid the 20% grade streets. So unfortunately, you have to wiggle. So this is the way that we connect one part of the city to another, to Golden Gate Park specifically from downtown. Tons of cyclists, and we've instituted neighborhood traffic calming tools all over it in order to make sure that everybody is safe there. This is Masonic. We had a German visitor, Yannick Linke, and he died on this street, probably in the intersection you're looking at. And so this was a $15 million street revamp. You see a brand new median, protected bike facilities, and what you see is missing is all the parking. So we removed hundreds of parking spaces on this neighborhood street that had prior looked like a freeway and now looks like a place that people live and people are biking and walking. We're got things going in the ground. So most of you will think of Lombard Street as our big twisty street, but the other side of it is actually the freeway. So this is Highway 101, and it is also on our high injury network. And currently under construction. So if you come to visit, you're going to go real slow while there's construction, and you'll go slowly afterwards too, because we're going to make it safer for everybody who is on that street. And we do have a, again, beyond those green bike lanes, we have a much larger toolbox that we're applying to the entire high injury network. So speed humps, in order to reduce speed, we've upgraded almost every high injury network crosswalk to Continental, with the one exception of the rainbow crosswalks in our Castro district. We're constantly thinking about signals and how to make it safe to cross the street. And I'm glad to hear the conversation about turn movements. Left turns contribute disproportionately to the number of severe injuries we see. So we're thinking specifically how to make left turns especially safe, especially now that we have a built out bicycle network, and where bicyclists are often at risk as left turning vehicles approach them. And this is on our safe people and safe vehicles outcome, which gets far less of our $65 million because we really believe that street engineering needs to be the core function of the work that we do, and the best way to improve our safety outcomes locally and given the dollars that we have. So we've done a lot of campaigns, and our campaigns are really talking about the data that we see where speeding is the #1 cause of the injury or fatal. And so we are starting to communicate, and I'm thankful to the doctor who presented earlier. We're trying to also communicate about using the right language, and also communicate that speeding is something that people have the control over, and that those injuries and fatals could be prevented if they're conscious of their actions in speeding. So we have a robust street outreach team where we talk to all of San Franciscans about how they can improve their driving behavior. I'm going to turn it over to Shamsi now. So the bulk of our presentation is going to be here on how we're connecting our hospitals and our public health to the traffic safety outcomes that we're seeing. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Shamsi.
Hello, folks. My name is Shamsi Soltani. I'm an epidemiologist with the Public Health Department, and I'm really glad to be speaking here today with Chava to really highlight the partnership we have in San Francisco between public health and transportation, and which is just really important for Vision Zero in our city. And that's also really underlined by the fact that SFMTA funds my position, even though I'm in a different department, because they recognize the need for the data. So this is a high-level overview of some of the things that public health manages for Vision Zero. Within this partnership, there is a co-chair, a counterpart to Chava in the Department of Public Health, who's my supervisor. We also lead data systems and evaluation, which is what I'm mostly going to focus on today. But so that you know, there's a lot of community education and policy pieces, as well as a really big focus on equity, which we will get a little bit into. I'm going to start with VZipper. This is the Vision Zero Injury Prevention Research Collaborative. This is public health folks and trauma hospital folks. In San Francisco, that hospital, Zuckerberg San Francisco General, is the only level 1 trauma center for the city and county of San Francisco. And that makes data a little easier in some ways, in that all the most severe injuries are ending up at that one hospital. We're sort of fortunate in that way that we can leverage that data point plus collision data from police. So this slide shows all our data sources. Traditional transportation injury monitoring is most often police collision reports, and that we do pull from there. And we combine that with ER data and trauma registry data, as well as for fatalities, Office of Medical Examiner reporting, which is sort of the gold standard since they do a big investigation into all trauma-related deaths. So a lot of people ask why we bother to do this linkage. It's a little bit complicated. It takes time. It takes coalition building across different parts of the municipality. But this is really my go-to answer, is that we know that if we don't connect hospital data with police data, we're missing out on a huge piece of the pie when we talk about transportation injury. So when we talk about severely injured bicyclists who are transported to the hospital for their injuries, we would be missing almost 40% of them if we only went with police data. And when you apply that to pedestrians, we'd be missing a quarter, and we'd be missing almost 30% of people in vehicles that have an injury serious enough to take them to the trauma center. But there are relative strengths to both of our data sources, our main data sources, because the police data really give us the detailed location data. We also get that from some of the EMS transports, but not everyone is transported by ambulance. And location is really useful because we do a lot of GIS mapping and we want to know where those engineering improvements can take place to have the biggest impact. But conversely, police data doesn't have very good severity assessment. There are visual assessments by police officers made at the scene of a collision that may or may not tally with how seriously someone is injured. And in our data set, we've seen that there's a lot of underreporting of the severity of injury, which is maybe what you might expect because hospitals are highly trained to assess that reliably. Hospital data also has the advantages of the other diagnoses that a patient record holds. We can get at some of the longer term outcomes of collision. We also can look at equity factors. Things that we want to look at are disability status, the high quality demographic information, age, gender, and so forth. And we can also, for the first time, start to look at homelessness based off of address data because we think these are populations disproportionately affected by traffic injury. So as an example of coalition building across the city, I like to give this example of monthly reporting of traffic deaths. So it seems simple, you know, how many people are dying in our city and report on it every month and make it reliable and make it comparable month to month and year to year. And when we came to Vision Zero in 2014, I think one of the first things that had to happen was the development of this traffic fatality protocol. And that took police working with SFMTA, working with the public health department and the Office of the Medical Examiner to agree on the definitions. That may sound a little obscure, but what I'm talking about is, you know, there's freeways in San Francisco, so we exclude things on grade separated freeway. When we talk about Vision Zero deaths, these are deaths on city streets. We exclude injuries that might be due to homicide or suicide following the medical examiner investigation. So there are some nuances, and this is just to say that it takes a lot of communication to get to the place where you can all agree on the numbers and be confident that you have the same number across different departments. So building those relationships, though, is really rewarding, particularly since there are always emerging issues in Vision Zero. It's such a dynamic field. In San Francisco, being so close to Silicon Valley, we have many, many new technology innovations, and one of them is powered scooters hitting the streets of San Francisco, which of course people ask us about all the time as soon as they hit the streets. SFMTA reacted really well and started a scooter pilot program to work with different companies that wanted to put scooters on the streets. And there were about a dozen companies that submitted applications, and they looked very holistically at the proposals and chose, based partially on equity and safety, like in those applications, the two companies that they would work with. And we're about 3 months into a 6-month pilot program where we will be evaluating safety among other features in terms of what the city will do moving forward in this like very dynamic situation. But more scooters on the streets, powered stand-up scooters, because even the terminology is confusing, not Vespa scooters, not mobility devices. It really highlighted for us a gap in our transportation injury surveillance. Hospital codes, you can see, you're not meant to be able to read them, but it's just to give you an idea of the complexity and variety of medical codes. These are ICD-10 codes, that there are external cause of injury codes that might end up in a medical record. And what we have been doing is grouping these into different traditional transportation modes, whether walking, biking, riding a motorcycle, or driving, or being in a car driving or not. But that doesn't really help us when you're talking about devices that look like that. Clinicians don't know necessarily what they are. The patient might not be able to tell you what it was that they were writing if it's a trauma situation. So we went back to this VZipper collaborative with the hospital to say, how is it that we can really improve our data capture so that we can talk in an informed way about how these transportation modes are affecting people in our city. And so we came up with this rubric, and I think a lot of different jurisdictions are struggling and coming up with similar things, a visual cheat sheet where we say, these are the categories. Even if you don't know the name of it, you can take the name off this sheet, put it in the medical record, and it'll show up on the back end in our trauma registry so that we can start to say what's what with the empirical data from hospitals. We also really took this opportunity to add a couple more questions to the trauma registry. One of them is about automated vehicles, because we know that this is another thing that's on the growth edge of transportation. And we added a question too about the way in which people access this mobility. Is it through an app? And there's a category on there for ride-hail vehicles or TNCs, and Lyft and Uber are really big in San Francisco. So as I've sort of thrown at you many different data sources, you can see that we have sort of environmental ones, we have ones having to do with the futures of collisions, and we put all these things together in a really special database managed by my colleague that's called transbase.org. And that's the website at the top right. It's publicly available, so anyone curious can kind of take a look and map these things over the city of San Francisco. And what's up there is collision severity. And as many people have said before me today, you can already tell at a glance that severity of collisions is not randomly distributed. So that means that you could predict it and prevent it. And here are some data-driven programs that show you how we do that. This is the high injury network that I've already touched on. 13% of streets where 3/4 of the most severe and fatal injuries happen in San Francisco. What do we do with this information? Well, we use it to inform the capital improvements in San Francisco. Getting back to equity, we can also use the high injury network to understand how historically disadvantaged populations interact with this. In orange, there are areas that we call communities of concern. So there's a lot of things go into them, but they're sort of proxies for communities where English is not a primary language, communities of color, and we can see by overlaying this map that although they're only 30% of city streets, let me advance, they're 51% of the high injury network. So this is a really concrete visualization of how there's historical disinvestment in certain communities and how Vision Zero work can advance equity in this way. We also use our data to look at other vulnerable populations. Seniors and people with disabilities I'm highlighting because we see in San Francisco, and I think many of you will relate, that disproportionate numbers of pedestrian fatalities are seniors. And this map just shows all the locations in blue where there were collisions with severe or fatal outcomes for people with disabilities or seniors. And then in that sort of teal color are all the attractors, all the places that people get their regular healthcare services, or places like public libraries where these populations hang out. So something like this helps us target education campaigns and traffic calming. And then again, we can have all the data in the world, but community engagement is really key. We know that there's disinvestment, but if someone doesn't know the projects that are going to their community, it's to no avail. And so we work really hard to outreach to people that live in the places improvements are happening, and in ways where we can reach people that wouldn't be able to attend a typical community meeting necessarily. And that's it for me. I'm going to pass it off to Chava for strong partnerships.
Sure. So I think Shamsi just showed, this is our public health partnership is critical to our transportation outcomes. And we've talked a lot about the other E's. So I just wanted to make sure I did pay respect to our other partners in Vision Zero, even though they're not here standing right next to me. One that we're really proud of is what we call the crisis response for victims' families. So there is a social safety net. So we are focused on prevention, but we need to acknowledge that we continue to have fatalities on our streets, and we want to pay special attention to those families. So we do an entire crisis response that is not just the SFPD and the SFMTA going out to look at engineering improvements, but it also involves the district attorney, because we're talking about a crime that has just occurred. And so we want those families to have access and knowledge to what's going on next, including, and also our medical examiner, who has the most information about their loved one. And we also have funding available for funeral costs to those families. And so bringing all those partners together actually was a tremendous amount of work. And now when a fatality occurs, everybody knows what happens next across the city family. And I think that, you know, there's no changing that someone is now lost to those families, but hopefully we are no longer part of that problem, and that we're providing our own social safety net to those families. We do partner with our police, of course, just like everybody else. Something we've asked them to focus on last year was motorcycle safety. So we always talk about motorcyclists as vulnerable road users, and there's not a lot of traffic interventions that we have at our disposal because they're small, nimble, but high-powered. So we've been working directly with motorcyclist communities who are very strong communities, if you can imagine. And our motorcycle safety campaign is often brought along with one of our motorcycle police officers. And so they've been part of our education campaign in the last year, and we're going to be continuing that motorcycle safety program. Really critical, I think, we saw that you need to have a strong mayor, and I was really proud to see the mayor here as well. Our mayor plays Mayor Says once a year on Walk to School Day, and here we have these adorable children wearing our Vision Zero swag, their capes, their Vision Zero heroes. And she's been a strong supporter of Vision Zero and mentioned it in her recent State of the City and has been supporting a lot of our infrastructure projects. She's in the blue on the left. We continue to engage our community. So we talk about partnerships, and I think we've been really focusing on our city partnerships, but we need to make sure we're having a constant conversation with the advocates in our neighborhoods who are loudest microphones out there. I cannot be everywhere. We have 800,000 San Franciscans and 400,000 people coming in every day into the city. I can't talk to 1.2 million people, but these people do through their networks. So we have recently re-engaged where we're updating our Vision Zero action strategy, and I'm going to talk about that in just a second. But having them at the table and having them as our partners, and we do see them as partners, is critical to the success of our Vision Zero program. So we were asked our lessons learned and some of our next steps. So I just mentioned it. You need to have your community consistently engaged. So, we're only bureaucrats, and I'm here 8 hours a day. But people are out in their neighborhoods all day, every day, and having champions in our neighborhoods is critical. Our real next steps, and I'm glad to see the provincial leaders here as well, because we do need to work with our state and our federal government, and we have specific asks and specific requests that we have for the region, the state, and the feds, and they are these things. So we in California are not legally allowed to automate and enforce. And so we have a state policy request out there. The 85th percentile rule, Dana, we are also struggling with it. And so that is on there, the urban speed limit setting goal. Right now, we have no choice about the speed limits that we set. We think that localities should have the ability to reduce speed limits. And Boston recently did and saw a tremendous reduction in the average speed of cars, because most people do want to follow the rules. And so going from 25 to 20 means that 80% of people will reduce their speed by 5 miles per hour. And that's a big deal, and that's something we'd like to have local control over. The other two are pricing and local control over TNCs. So TNCs are Lyfts and Ubers, and pricing is about congestion pricing. And so these both of that are talking about vehicle miles traveled. So I'm going to get to that soapbox in one slide, but I'm going to lay off it for a second. The local regulation of TNCs is about making sure that the fleet on the road is safe, that drivers are trained, and that we are talking to these drivers in a meaningful way. We know that a lot of them are coming in from other places, maybe outside the state, and are not going to be familiar with San Francisco specific issues like green bike lanes. There's lots of places that don't have green bike lanes. And so that might be news to a TNC driver who doesn't have, we're not enabled to educate through any process because that's done at the state level. And so getting local authority is really important to us. And congestion pricing is about reducing vehicle miles traveled. And so right now we have no ability to price either moving vehicles through the city. And so I'm going to move to this next slide, because this is, I think, something we haven't talked about. So this room has talked a lot about speed, but I also think that vehicle miles traveled are a major predictor of the number of fatalities that you will have in your city. And if we don't talk about a way to reduce vehicle miles traveled, we are just not going to get to zero. And so there are 4 ways that we need to move these goals, that we need to move forward for us to get to zero. And those 4 things are making sure that jobs are near housing. And so that way people have the ability to not get in their car. They need to be able to make a walk or bike trip to their convenience store. If there's no convenience store for you to get milk for your 1-year-old, then you are going to get in your car. And then you are increasing the exposure that people who are walking or biking have to vehicles. Mode shift is about encouraging people to walk and bike. Some people don't know that those are great choices, and we need to make it clear that those are available options for people. A huge elephant in the room is our transit reliability and our transit availability. Having a robust transit network makes it, walking and biking is a great choice for under 1 mile, but people got to go other places. And having a transit system that's functioning and powerful is critical to getting people out of their cars. And I know all of us know this, but I really want us to think about how do we connect that to getting to zero. And lastly, is all of these things are about greenhouse gas reductions, and climate action is real. And so if these things all work together in a synergistic way, then we're going to get to zero. And without these things, I will have all the actions in the world that I will take, that I have the control over at the city and county level. And I don't think we can get there. These things need to happen. And right now, I'm going to be honest that San Francisco is not trending in the right direction on any of these. And we need to start talking about what it means that we've added vehicle miles traveled through Lyft and Ubers. That is a known fact. We need to talk about the fact that we don't spend enough money on great, reliable, affordable transportation. And land use and housing, I know that this is a real issue in Vancouver too. And so San Francisco has made it unaffordable for most people to live near the things that they need to get to, and specifically their job. And if we don't make a real push towards affordability for all people to be able to make choices about where they live, then we are just not, we're not getting to zero. And so that's where this last pyramid comes in for us, which is, you know, I live in the gray. I live in the strategic actions. Those are my job all day. And I need help on the right. I need help getting the state to agree to some of the really bold initiatives that we're proposing around speed limit reduction. And we really need help to start talking honestly about how transportation safety relates to great transit, how transportation safety relates to greenhouse gas reduction. And if we're not there, we're all going to be fighting a real uphill battle, and people are going to be focusing on our actions when the powerful change is on that right side. And lastly, you know, we've talked about equity, but what does it mean to have an equity focus? It means when I talk about congestion pricing, it can't be at the expense of people who have limited incomes and are getting charged, you know, a significant amount of their income because they have to use their car. We have to find an equitable solution to that pricing. And I know it's out there, and I know that brilliant minds can come up with it if we really spend the time, but right now we're struggling to even have that conversation. So I really challenge everybody in this room, because you're all leaders. And so you don't need to know about my actions, about increasing walking time, because those are great and those are important, and we're going to do those. But if this room isn't moving the right side over here, we're going to be here in 5 years still talking about our strategic actions, but we're not going to have moved our needle. So I hope that you all think about that for lunch, because that ends our presentation. So thank you very much. And I really appreciate all your time.
So thank you to Hava and Shamsi. The breadth of actions that they're taking and the successes that they're having are inspirational in my mind. And what I was particularly impressed with is the collaboration that they're doing across the spectrum. And we all need to be trying to do that and get on those successes. You still have some challenges, but you've made incredible progress. So that's it for this morning. We are now going to go over to lunch. So you can head across the plaza to the Civic Hotel, where there's lunch waiting for us. Other things to note is at our exhibition hall, and at 1:25 there will be some refreshments and snacks there as well. And then we'll be resuming back here at 2 o'clock. Okay, anything else to say, Shabnam, before?
I was just wondering if anybody had any questions.
Okay, do we have time? We
do.
Okay. I thought, sorry, before you run, we actually, it turns out, I thought we were right on time. We're actually early. We're 10 minutes early. So
They did an incredible job because we were way behind before the start of this. So I'm going to actually ask you to come back up to the stage, and I'm hoping that there's some questions for them. Yeah.
This is the fun part, right? Welcome back.
So.
The glaring light.
Yeah.
We're back. We're back.
There's a question. Oh, great. Hi there. Shavita Patty, Medical Health Officer with Fraser Health here in Surrey. So thank you for an amazing presentation, and it really shows the changes that you're making in San Francisco. So I'm going to be a bit provocative here and think about the other benefits that having Vision Zero has. One of the things is, like everyone's very familiar with the traffic issues in the Bay Area. My father went to Berkeley, and that was his university thesis during his master's was on highway traffic in that California area. And I'm wondering, especially when it comes to public transportation, is really starting to tax or get funding from those corporations who would actually benefit from having increased movement of people and goods. And is San Francisco exploring that option?
Sure, we do. We have a couple, we have a bill currently going through the state legislature to tax Lyft and Uber specifically, with some caveats about, where the pickup or drop off is happening. I will say that right now, the conversation isn't about traffic. So when we're talking about funding, where we're really at is homelessness in San Francisco. And so I think, that's actually a lesson learned, is know when the time is right to talk about your issue, right? So in California, we ballot initiative. So that means all of our funding has to come through pretty much a vote of the people, and typically a 66% vote in favor of a new funding source. So we've got our hands tied a little bit about where our money comes from and how we use it. And so that means it is predicated based on public opinion. And right now, homelessness is the #1 issue in San Francisco, and it's where a lot of our new funding and new revenue goes to. That said, I did say we have a $65 million annual capital program, and that is a huge amount of money. Like I'm not sure if that resonates, but any transportation professional will just kind of be blown away by that amount of funding. And we got that out of past general obligation bonds. We also have sales tax. So we try to tax everyone. We try to just get it from everyone, from everywhere. And I think people really do see this nexus between TNCs and their impact on the road and traffic outcomes. But, right now, I'm not sure how powerful the current state bill is and how nexused it really is going to be. But whatever, we'll take whatever money they're giving, and we'll build an amazing transportation network and beef up our transit system specifically, which is the nice thing about being a combined agency. I hope that answers your question.
You mentioned Uber and Lyft. We're one of the few areas left in North America that haven't yet allowed ride sharing, and the province is working on regulations around potentially bringing in ride sharing. Do you have any lessons that you can share with us about how ride sharing may affect safety of other road users, and in particular vulnerable road users?
Yeah, so I'll talk about one project and then maybe the general program. So a single project is we have one of our highest density bike corridor uses in the city is called Valencia Street. And we have done now 2 road diets and are embarking on our 3rd of that street. And the reason we're on our 3rd is because we looked at the collision data 2 years ago and saw our highest percentage of dooring, and people are getting doored on both the right side and the left side, which means doors are opening everywhere. So the specific outcome is that TNCs are, they're predominantly there, and they're inherently less safe, and they're very cheap. So I think they were just more accessible than taxis. I'm not actually convinced that taxis would have been much safer, but TNCs are cheap, and they're very available, and they're very easy to use. And And so we did see on a very specific project a noticeable uptick of collisions related probably to TNC use on that corridor. So that's the mindfulness, but I would really say that the biggest issue was associated with TNCs and safety is the number of vehicle mile travel they're putting on the road. So there was a recent study, I think they just came out in the last 2 weeks, that said we would have to increase the provision of transit service by 27% in San Francisco to compete effectively with the reliability and availability of TNCs in the city. And so if you're not just hammering home that there's a regulation on the number of vehicle miles traveled or a dollar nexus to those vehicle miles traveled, then all other safety is out the window, right? We need to keep those miles down. And the TNCs have blown the number of miles we see on the road out of the water, and we're fighting uphill right now. So that would be the nexus. I would less focused on fleet safety or driver safety, while those things, because those things are easy. So get the hard thing in now, which is regulating how many road miles they're going to be traveling. Yeah, go on, Shamsi.
So I would also add that some of the most innovative stuff in regulating TNCs that I've seen is out of New York City, where they had, really historically strong taxi lobby. And that meant that for TNCs to get into New York City, that they had to agree to a certain level of data sharing, which to my knowledge doesn't happen in most places. And it doesn't happen in San Francisco. And of course, I'm a data person and I love the data, but how are you going to know where they are, where people are getting them, where the volumes are? Like that information is very helpful in planning and understanding what's going on. And we just don't have access to it at the governmental level.
I have a question. Thank you very much for your presentation. Shamsi, a question about your linked data. And I think you've pointed out the importance of linkage for those that you would have missed otherwise.
Right.
Can you speak a little bit about the climate in which you are able to link that data, concerns over privacy, identification of victims, and so on? My experience in British Columbia is that we're in a very cautious environment indeed around privacy.
Yeah, that's a great question. The linked data set is not a data set that's publicly available, first of all, because it is protected by HIPAA, which is, in the United States, very strong privacy laws around healthcare information. But we have gone through over a lot of hurdles to have access to the data, maybe helped by the fact that San Francisco happens to run that single trauma center. The county does. But that data is highly protected, and we are very careful to not identify, and in a way, if you knew where the collision happened and when it happened, who it was. But we everything that we publish from that TIS, the transportation data set, has to be cleared through a host of lawyers. So we're working to release, to get permission to release a really light data set that would only have 4 variables. And I think the time of day, the mode, and the location, maybe one other thing, so that, for example, the SFMTA could use the data, which they're really hungry to use because they know that it has increased capability compared to the collision reports that they have access to. But privacy concerns have really been a big part of the process. And so for us, it's been get access to the data, link it, show the utility in it, and then see how we can move forward from there.
Thank you.
All right, well, last question, and then we'll go for lunch.
Hi there. Amazing presentation. I just had a question about some of the maps that you were showing. Are any of them available, I guess, to the public? And what kind of data are you able to share? And I guess, how deep can a member of the public get into those maps?
I will say that pretty much anything we can share, we do share. Vision Zero in San Francisco is really big on transparency. And I would refer you to transbase.org or transbasesf.org because a lot of the underlying data is available there. Not so much things like that senior and people with disabilities map, because that was sort of specially designed for a purpose. But Transbase has just an unbelievable wealth of data in there on environmental variables. And feel free to reach out if you have further questions, specific questions about data.
Yeah, I'll actually add. So Transbase, I love it. I love it so much. It's a little clunky.
Mm-hmm.
So the best part about it is that it is a little clunky. So we are shifting into a much more user-friendly interface that allows you to just query by like an intersection and a time period, and it'll zoom in on all the collisions that were police reported and not the hospital data. And then you could just click on it. And from a transportation professional perspective, like the number of times someone says, why don't we have an X at this intersection? And if I can quickly zoom in as opposed to piling through old Excel sheets, I've got that information at my fingertips, or I can point someone to why there is a problem, because that would be publicly available. So our public health department, which is amazing, is actually building a user-friendly tool that I think is coming out definitely somewhere towards the end of 2019. So we'll be on the circuit hyping that for sure. And yes, we are just dying for the hospital data. We really want it. And some of the information I think that's in there is, cyclists that have a solo collision, right, and then hurt themselves very severely. And the example would be train tracks, where cyclists go over train tracks and they end up in the ER, of course. And that is a fixable, measurable thing, but we would never collect that from the police, because the police are not going to go to a cyclist falling over a train track. They don't see that as a transportation collision. There's no other person involved. But that's the kind of data I'm hoping we're going to tease out as we work through the privacy rules around that data. And I think that would help inform all practitioners across the country, because you don't have to do it. You can just use our proxy data. All right, well, thank you all. And we'll be available for lunch.
All right, we will see you over at the Civic Hotel for lunch.